sun had barely risen over the eastern horizon when Gandalf, the gray pilgrim, began his reflection. The day seemed as unremarkable as any other, the skies lightening with the dawn, the scent of wet earth still heavy in the air. Yet to Gandalf, every sunrise carried the weight of ages, each passing year a reminder of the quiet, unseen forces at play in Middle-earth. Though many knew him as a wanderer, a guide in times of need, few understood the burden he carried in his heart, one that had been shaped by the rise of Sauron and the long shadow cast by the Dark Lord. He had seen much, heard much, and above all, he had learned that the greatest battles were often those fought within the confines of one's own soul. And so, standing in the peace of Rivendell, a place long untouched by the hands of evil, Gandalf was drawn into memories he had long kept hidden. The weight of the past pressed heavily on his thoughts. He had come to this land, so far removed from the chaos that had once plagued it, seeking peace. But peace could not come so easily, not when the echoes of Sauron's rise still reverberated in every corner of Middle-earth. Gandalf had witnessed it all, the Dark Lord's first ascent in the Second Age, the seduction of the elves by the One Ring, and the eventual fall of Númenor. But the shadow that fell upon Sauron's power, the whispers of his true nature, was a mystery Gandalf had never fully understood until now. It was in Rivendell, among the ancient halls of Elrond's home, that Gandalf had been asked to seek out something long forgotten, the truth of Sauron's past. With the war against the Dark Lord looming on the horizon, it had become clear to all that the struggle would be one not just of armies, but of knowledge. And so, Gandalf turned his mind to the dark past, the secrets that Sauron had buried beneath centuries of lies. The relics of old have much to tell, Gandalf, Elrond had said. His voice, usually calm and wise, now carried a note of urgency. But some truths, even the wisest of us fear to touch. Are you prepared for what you may uncover? Gandalf's answer had been quiet, reflective. A time will come when there will be no place for secrets, Elrond. The darkness must be understood before it can be fought. I shall seek out the truth of Sauron's origins, as much as it is within my power. He had not been prepared for the emotional weight of his decision, nor the personal toll it would take on him. As his hands combed through the vast archives of Rivendell, he discovered a forgotten manuscript hidden deep within a chamber. The parchment was brittle with age, the ink faint, but Gandalf's keen eyes soon discerned the familiar script, a tale of power, corruption, and Sauron's origins that had never reached the ears of the Free Peoples. The manuscript spoke of the Palantiri, those ancient seeing stones forged by the elves, which had once been used by Sauron himself. Gandalf's heart quickened. The stones were not just for sight, they were conduits to greater power, a tool Sauron had used to manipulate and deceive. The text revealed that the Dark Lord had once been known by another name, a servant of the Valor, before he was corrupted by Morgoth's shadow. For years, Gandalf had heard of Sauron's rise to power, but it was the story of his descent, how a being once made of light had fallen into darkness, that caught his attention most. Sauron's lust for domination had never been simply about controlling lands, but minds. With the Palantir, he had sought to dominate all of Middle-earth, not through force of arms, but through persuasion, manipulation, and deceit. But the manuscript offered something more, the tantalizing hint of a lost artifact, one that had been at the heart of Sauron's first rise. It was said to be a key to understanding his transformation, the heart of the Valor, a relic older than even the rings of power. This artifact was said to have the power to bind, to control, and perhaps even to reshape the very nature of a person's will. And according to the manuscript, it had been buried in a forgotten corner of Middle-earth, hidden for centuries. Gandalf's heart sank as he realized the full import of the discovery. This artifact, once the key to Sauron's fall from grace, might now hold the power to shape the course of Middle-earth's future. For good or for ill, it had to be found. The revelation twisted in Gandalf's mind like a knife. He had spent so long guiding others, protecting them from the shadows, but now the darkness he had feared and fought for so long was calling to him. He had to understand it. The temptation to possess the knowledge of the relic was almost overwhelming. But it came with a price. The deeper one went into the past, the harder it became to discern the light from the dark. Power has a way of warping those who seek it, Gandalf whispered to himself, the words of Elrond echoing in his mind. And it is too easy to lose oneself in the pursuit. Even now, with his mind burdened by the weight of the discovery, Gandalf could feel the pull of the relic, drawing him closer. He knew that this journey would not be easy. There were truths buried in the deepest corners of Middle-earth, truths about Sauron's first steps toward domination that were far older and darker than he had ever imagined. In the quiet of the library, Gandalf's fingers hovered over the pages, his heart heavy with the knowledge he had just uncovered. The shadows of the past were beginning to unfurl, and there was no turning back now. He had made his decision. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but it was a path he must walk. For the fate of Middle-earth rested on understanding the very forces of darkness that had shaped its history. And in that moment, as the sun began to set over Rivendell, Gandalf knew that his journey, one that would delve into the heart of Sauron's corruption, had just begun. What secrets lay within the depths of the heart of the Valor? He would find out soon enough. And with those secrets, perhaps he would uncover the key to destroying the darkness once and for all. The path to Mount Doom, or Orodruin as it was once known, had grown long and treacherous as Thalion and Gandalf made their way through the desolate landscape of Mordor. The mountain loomed in the distance, its peak hidden beneath a thick shroud of smoke breathing the fumes of its own dark history. Thalion, the ancient elven historian, walked beside Gandalf, his eyes fixed on the barren land before them, the echoes of old memories flickering in his mind. The weight of history hung heavily upon both of them, for Orodruin was not just a mountain, but a place where the very fabric of Middle-earth had been irrevocably altered. Gandalf's voice broke the silence, soft, but full of the weight of his thoughts. The One Ring was forged here, in the heart of this mountain, he said, his gaze drifting upward to the peak. It is the source of Sauron's power, and the mark of his deepest corruption. Thalion nodded, his long, silver hair catching the wind. I have heard the tales, of course, he said, his voice tinged with sorrow. But to stand here, at the sight of such evil, is something else entirely. This place has seen the birth of the darkness that now threatens to consume us all. As they approached the ruinous entrance to the forges, Thalion could feel the air grow colder, the ground beneath his feet, a cracked and lifeless remnant of a once thriving land. The sense of something oppressive hung in the air, an ancient presence that had not been fully vanquished, a presence that lingered, waiting. Gandalf paused before the entrance, his gaze searching the landscape. Many think of Sauron's rise in terms of his war against the free peoples of Middle-earth, he said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken memories. But it began here, with the forging of the rings. It began with ambition and deception. Thalion stepped forward, his keen elven senses alert to the shifting shadows. Ambition, yes, but what was Sauron's true purpose? Was it power for the sake of power, or something more? Gandalf was silent for a moment before he answered. He sought to reshape Middle-earth, to bend all things to his will. His ambition was to create a perfect order, one that would be ruled by him alone. The rings were a means to that end, a way to control the hearts and minds of others, to establish dominion over all. The two companions entered the ruins, the walls crumbling around them, the air thick with the scent of long-forgotten fire and dark sorcery. The forge where the One Ring had been crafted stood before them, a vast, hollowed-out cavern of stone. In the center, a large platform remained, though much of it had collapsed over the centuries. The walls were etched with runes, some still faintly glowing, others worn and broken by time. Thalion's eyes narrowed as he approached the platform, his fingers brushing against the cold stone. This is where it all began. This is where Sauron's vision of control took root. Gandalf nodded. It was here that Sauron's true intentions became clear. The forging of the rings was not just an attempt to rule. It was an effort to enslave. The power of the rings, and the One Ring in particular, was meant to dominate the very will of the free peoples of Middle-earth. Thalion took a step back, his thoughts heavy with the weight of the past. And yet, here we stand, in the heart of the darkness that he wrought. It is strange, Gandalf, to think that So much of this land is still haunted by the echoes of what was done here. It is as if the mountain itself remembers. Gandalf's gaze darkened. It does. The echoes of Orodruin are not just the sounds of the past. They are the remnants of Sauron's ambition, his lingering influence. The mountain may be quiet now, but it still holds power that can be awakened. As they continued their exploration of the ruins, Gandalf's mind was weighed down by the enormity of what they had uncovered. The deeper they delved into the heart of Orodruin, the more he realized how little he truly understood about Sauron's ambitions. The Dark Lord's rise had not been a simple matter of conquest. It had been an elaborate scheme, a plan of manipulation and deceit that had stretched far beyond the One Ring. Thalion's voice broke through his thoughts. Gandalf, there is something else here, something beneath the surface. The wizard turned to see Thalion, crouching near a cracked stone slab at the edge of the platform. He approached cautiously, his eyes narrowing as he studied the markings etched into the stone. There was a pattern, a series of runes that seemed out of place among the others. Gandalf knelt beside Thalion, his fingers brushing against the markings. It's elvish, Gandalf murmured, his voice a mixture of surprise and recognition. But it's ancient, older than anything I've encountered. Thalion's eyes widened. This is no ordinary inscription. These runes, they speak of something beyond the rings, beyond Sauron's ambitions. This is a reference to something else, something even older. Gandalf's heart skipped a beat. He had known that Sauron's plans were deep and far-reaching. But this was something he had not anticipated. What is it? He asked, his voice low with anticipation. Thalion's fingers traced the runes carefully, his brow furrowing in concentration. It speaks of the forging of power, not just for control, but for destruction. It refers to an artifact, something that was hidden here, something that was never meant to be uncovered. Gandalf's mind raced. An artifact hidden in the heart of Orodruin, tied to Sauron's true purpose. We must find it, he said, determination rising in his voice. As they continued to search the ruins, Gandalf's mind turned over the implications of their discovery. The power that had once emanated from this mountain had not simply been about ruling. It had been about reshaping Middle-earth itself. And though the mountain lay silent now, Gandalf knew that the true nature of Sauron's plans remained a mystery, even to him. With a heavy heart, Gandalf turned to Thalion. We must uncover the full truth of this place, Thalion. Sauron's rise was not just a matter of rings and war. It was a matter of reshaping all of Middle-earth in his image, and the artifact that lies hidden here may hold the key to understanding it all. As they ventured deeper into the crumbling fortress, the shadows grew longer, and Gandalf felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. The struggle against Sauron was far from over, and with each step they took, Gandalf realized just how much was still unknown, how much darkness more he understood. To confront Sauron, they would have to face not only the Dark Lord's forces, but the very heart of his ambition. The winds of Mount Doom, Orodruin, howled with a deep, mournful cry as Gandalf and Thalien made their way across the desolate landscape. The volcanic ash that had once erupted from the mountain now covered the land in a thick, gray blanket, marking the remnants of an age-long conflict. As they approached the crumbled entrance to the forges, Gandalf's heart grew heavy. Though many years had passed since Sauron's fall, the weight of the past still clung to this forsaken place. I had hoped to never return here, Gandalf muttered, his voice low and full of melancholy. But I fear the time has come to confront what lies buried. Thalien, the ancient elven historian, stood silently beside him, his ageless eyes scanning the darkened horizon. The past never truly stays buried, Gandalf. It waits, patient as stone, for the right moment to rise again. The two of them entered the ruins of the great forge. The once mighty halls of Orodruin, now mere skeletal remains, cracked and crumbling under the weight of centuries. The stone was cold to the touch, and the oppressive silence of the mountain hung heavy in the air. The very ground seemed soaked in the memories of the past, the moment when Sauron had first forged the One Ring, when the Dark Lord's ambitions had taken root. Gandalf stood before the remains of the forge, a grim realization settling upon him. Here it began, he murmured. Sauron's plan, his great betrayal of the elves. The rings of power, forged in this very place, were not just tools for dominion. They were instruments of control, of domination, not only of lands, but of hearts and minds. Thalien stepped closer, his gaze narrowing as he studied the fractured ruins of the forge. Yes, he said softly, his voice tinged with sadness. It was not only the One Ring that Sauron created here. It was the means to bind every free mind to his will, to bring all of Middle-earth under his shadow. The wind howled through the shattered remnants of the mountain, carrying with it the whispers of the past. Gandalf closed his eyes, allowing the echoes to fill his mind. He could feel the shadow of Sauron still lurking in the depths of Orodruin, the malevolent force that had once threatened all of Middle-earth. The power of the One Ring had never truly faded. It had only bided its time. This was never just about war, Gandalf said, his voice low, contemplative. It was about control, about bending the will of every living being to a single purpose, his own. Thalien turned to face Gandalf, his brow furrowed in thought. You speak of power, Gandalf, but what drives that power? What is it that compels Sauron to seek such dominion? Gandalf hesitated. The question was one he had often grappled with in his own heart. Sauron's lust for control was vast, but it was also twisted, corrupted by something darker still, something Gandalf could not yet understand. He was not always this way, Gandalf finally said, his voice heavy with the weight of his own revelations. Sauron was once a servant of the Valor, a being of light and purpose. His desire for power began as something noble. He sought to bring order to Middle-earth. But somewhere along the way, that desire twisted. He wanted not just to guide, but to rule. Thalion's eyes narrowed, his mind racing as he absorbed Gandalf's words. So it was not hate that drove him. It was the lust for dominion, the need to shape the world as he saw fit. Yes, Gandalf replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. But in seeking control, he lost himself. The power of the One Ring corrupted him utterly. It was no longer about bringing peace or order. It became about absolute rule. His desire to dominate consumed him. The two stood in the silence of Orodruin, the vast emptiness surrounding them as they pondered the nature of Sauron's fall. Gandalf could feel the weight of history pressing upon him, the enormity of what had happened here in this place so long ago. It was a reminder of the dangers of power, of the thin line between good and evil, and the ease with which one could slip into the darkness. I had thought that by defeating Sauron, we would rid the world of his influence, Gandalf said quietly, his gaze fixed on the remnants of the forge. But I see now that his ambition was never confined to a single moment in time. It is a force that spreads, that permeates every corner of Middle-earth. Thalion's voice broke the silence. And yet, you are not without hope, Gandalf. You know as well as I do that the strength to fight such darkness lies not in the power of the ring, but in the hearts of those who resist it. Gandalf turned to face Thalion, his eyes filled with a quiet resolve. Indeed, but to resist, one must understand. One must know the true nature of the enemy, and that is what I have yet to fully grasp. Sauron's power is not just physical, it is a corruption of the mind, a seduction of the soul. To defeat him, we must fight not only his forces, but the very ideas he represents. As the two of them continued to explore the ruins, Gandalf's mind raced with the implications of what he had uncovered. The One Ring was not simply a tool of domination. It was a symbol of Sauron's deeper ambitions. And while the ring had been destroyed, the Dark Lord's influence still lingered, like a shadow that stretched across time. We cannot simply fight Sauron on the battlefield, Gandalf said, his voice heavy with the weight of this realization. We must fight his influence wherever it spreads. In the hearts of the free peoples, in the minds of those who would seek power, and in the very lands that have been touched by his corruption. Thalion nodded in agreement. You are right, Gandalf. The task before us is not just to defeat Sauron's armies. It is to root out his ideas, to undo the damage he has done to the world. They stood together in the silent ruins of Orodruin, the shadows of the past reaching out to them. The road ahead would not be easy, and the burden of knowledge they carried would only grow heavier. But in that moment, Gandalf knew that the fight was far from over. The true enemy was not just the Dark Lord, but the darkness that final, lingering glance at the remains of Orodruin, Gandalf turned and began to walk away. His journey was far from over, and the true nature of Sauron's ambitions still eluded him. But one thing was certain: the darkness would never truly fade, and the fight to resist it would continue as long as there were those willing to